and hopefully the guys will be able to have a chance to get on board. Okay. The year of learning, Dr. Paul Koningsberg, in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nissen Hara Nissen ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Bromberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Hessel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avrameir ben Shimon, Cheryl Sher, her children and grandchildren, excuse me, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva, Marcia Fetterbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Fetterbush, Uriel ben Harav Shimon. A month of learning sponsored by Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bas Yehuda Leib. A week of learning sponsored by Minnie Shavrik, in memory of all those we lost in the past year. By Siggy and Lala Bessler, in memory of his father, Dov Berish ben Meshulam Fivish. By Yossi and Sippy Peleg, in memory of his father, Meir ben Shmuel. By Herschel and Mira Sennett, in memory of his mother, Reitza bas Yitzchak Yaakov, and her mother, Shosha bat Abraham Halevi. By Gedalia and Phyllis Reese, in memory of his father, Harav Chaim ben Shraga Feivel. By Oscar and Shelley Mole, in memory of his father, Shlomo ben Yitzchak, and mother, Rachel bas Naphtali. And that is it for today. May the Shemas have an aliyah, Craig Rafiel, Vet the Yeshua Shema Tzliah, L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched yar.
Amen.
Okay. Okay. Our Gemara, remember, was dealing with various prohibitions, okay, regarding chametz and other items, similar items. Starting on the bottom of Mem Amud Beis, the last line. Marle Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Rav Huna bered the Rav Yehuda. Okay, so he continues there on the top of Mem Aleph our daf for today. Acharoset ka'amar or achardal ka'amar mar was his discussion of the fact that it was a machloket, referring to charoset, as we said yesterday, or to mustard. Amarle l'may nafkamina, what's the difference, right? L'de Rav Kahana, according to Rav Kahana's statement, the Amar Rav Kahana, machloket l'tocha chardal. The machloket was between the sages and Rabbi Meir on regards to mustard. Aval l'tocha charoset, but adding flour, we said to the charoset, divrei hakol yisoref miyad. According to everybody, one should burn it immediately. Amarle, so he said to him, Rav Huna to Rav Nachman, okay, lo shamili, I didn't hear that, Rav Kahana's statement. Klomar, lo sevirale, understood to mean I did not agree with it. So that's where we left off yesterday. Now, Rama Rav Ashi, okay? Rav Ashi wants to give a clarification. Kivate, the Rav Kahana mistabra. According to the view of Rav Kahana, that seems logical. Mida Amar Shmuel, since it was Shmuel who said another occasion, Ein halacha ka Rabbi Yossi, that the law is not like Rabbi Yossi. Remember, he had said that you could soak it in vinegar because vinegar is going to contract the grains
Keep it
My
from
love, Tsamutehu delot samit. Is it not because he said that it contracts? Okay, that the vinegar again is not going to contract it. Hamu, right? Hamu'e michma'a. But rather it causes the leavening process to increase, to promote the leavening. No, says the Gemara. Dilma lo mitzamet samit. Perhaps it's possible that it doesn't contract, okay, the grains. Velo chamua mechma'a, nor does it promote the leavening. So we can't use that as our argument. New piece from our Mishnah, right? So there's no proof then from Shmuel's statement that the law is not like Rabbi Yossi. Okay, says the Mishnah, Ein mevashlim. We cannot cook the Pesach offering in liquids or particularly fruit juices, right? Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. B'mayim, when we referred to water, okay, what did that mean? Li ele b'mayim. That would seem to imply the prohibition only would apply to water. Sha'ar mashkin minayin. How do we know that other liquids are also forbidden? Amarta kal v'chomer. You might say this is based on a kal v'chomer argument. Uma mayim she'ein mefigin ta'amam asurim. The same way that water that is not going to impart or temper the taste of the korban is forbidden. Sha'ar mashkin, other liquids, shemafigin ta'amam, that could impart or temper the taste of the korban, right? Lo kol shekain. How much more so that should be forbidden? Rabbi Omer. However, Rabbi says now as follows: B'mayim, when the pasuk said water, ein li elamayim, we have nothing here but water. Sha'ar mashkin minayin, other liquids, what's the basis? Talmud Lomar, says Rebbe, ubashel mivushal, okay, using the double language. Okay, remember we said that bishul normally, while it's usually translated cooking, actually refers to boiling in water. Okay, in that case, the double language, mikol makom, regardless, right? Under any circumstances. My benaihu. So what's the difference between the two derivatives? In other words, the two attempts to come to a conclusion of why other liquids are forbidden. Ika benaihu. The following is between them. Tzli kedar, namely, that the meat is cooked in its own juices in a pot, otherwise known as pot roast, right? V'Rabbanan, and the rabbis then, if that's the case, Hai bashel mevushal, the double language of the pasuk there, what do they do with it, right? Hai avid laho, avdei laho, what do they do with it? Mebaye le'lekidatanya. They need it as was taught the following. Bashlo va'achar kach tzla'o. If one cooked it, remember we're saying, right, boiled it in water or in any liquid, and then afterwards roasted it, okay? Oh, shetzla'o va'achar kach bishlo, or that they roasted it, right? And then afterwards boiled it, cooked it, chayav, one would be over on the transgression, right? And be guilty. Now the Gemara comes back with an answer. Bishlema bishlo v'achar kach tzla'o chayav. That's acceptable, understandable. If someone cooked, boiled it, and afterwards roasted it, right? in fire, he would be obligated, right? He would be chayav. Why? Daha bashle, because he cooked it. Elet sla'o ve'achar kach bishlo. But if he roasted it and afterwards cooked it, boiled it, hat tzli eish. Here it was still done, right? Roasted by fire. Hat tzli eshu. Isn't that the case? Amai. Why then is that a case of one being chayav?
Rabbi, in
Yes.
this case, we're talking about the carbon pesach. We're not talking about our minhag of abstaining from roasted meat, right?
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Amar Rav Kahana, says Rav Kahana, Mani. Okay, according to whom is this? Rabbi Yossi. This is according to Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya, because it was taught in the Braita, Yotz'in berikik hasharui umivushal, that one can satisfy their requirement, okay, of, we're assuming here that they may be referring to matzah in the form of a wafer, unleavened wafer that has been soaked, or it has been cooked, okay? Shelo nimuach, so long as it hasn't dissolved. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's the view of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Omer, says Rabbi Yossi, Yotz'in berekik hasharui, that one can fulfill their obligation of matzah with a unleavened wafer that has been soaked, aval lo b'mevushal, but not necessarily with one that has been boiled, cooked, right? Afal pi shelo nimuach, even though it hasn't dissolved. Ula omer, and now Ula wants to clarify, okay, and give a different explanation, okay? Ama afilu tema Rabbi Meir, when we're talking about the Korban Pesach, right? And we're dealing with the issue of it's being roasted first and then cooked. You might say that even Rabbi Meir, okay, is going to say that in this case, he's really talking about the matzah. Okay, sorry. Shani hacha, it's different here. The amakra. Why? Because the pasuk specifically says to us, Bashel vashel mevushal mikom makom. Okay, the double language implying here, okay, that it's prohibited in any case, under any circumstances. Okay, now a new braita. Tanu Rabbanan, Yachol Sla'o Kol Tzarcho Yehe Chayav. It's possible, said this braita, that one could roast the animal, roast the Korban Pesach completely, and yet one would still be chayiv, liable. Talmud Loma, and as one could have thought that, the pasuk, however, comes to teach us, al tochol, or okay, al tochal mimenu na ubashel mevushal b'mayim. Okay, and I'm going to use Art Scroll's translation here. You shall not eat it partially roasted or cooked. Okay, so what happens? Na ubashel mevushal amarti, partially cooked, okay, or partially roasted and cooked. I'm going to define it a little differently. I said, amarti lach, Hashem said to you, v'lo shetzala'o kol tzarko, and not that you roasted it the entire way. Hechidami, how is that possible? Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, okay, deshavya charucha, that it means that it's equivalent to being totally burnt or totally charred. Okay. Now, a new braita. Tanu Rabbanan. Again, trying to clarify this. So it's not, while a new Braita, we're still going to deal slightly with this question, okay, of the cooking or the roasting of the Korban Pesach. Yachol achol kizayit chai yehe chayav. One might think that if one ate the equivalent of a kazayas of the Korban Pesach while it's still raw, that one would be liable. Talmud Lomar, text says, Al tochlu mimenu na ubashel mevushal. Don't eat it partially roasted. That's how I'll continue to translate na, or cooked. Na ubashel amarti lach velo chai. Okay? Partially roasted or cooked, the Kadosh Baruch Hu said to you, and not raw. Okay, therefore, Yechol Yehe Mutar. Perhaps it might be thought to be permitted. Talmud Lomar Ki Im Tzli Eish. Therefore, the Torah text tells us it has to be Tzli Eish, roasted by fire. Hechidami na. So what then do we mean when we say partially roasted? Amar Rav, says Rav, Kida Amre Parsai Avranim. Says Rav, as the Persians call it, Avranim. And that actually is based on a Persian word that means partially roasted, half roasted. Okay? Now, a new piece, okay, regarding the Korban Pesach. Amar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda, Hamivashel b'chamei Tiberia b'Shabbat. One who cooks anything using the hot water from the Tiberias hot springs and does so on Shabbat, patur, is exempt. Pesach, shebishlo b'chamei Tiberia, chayav. But the Korban Pesach, if he cooks it in the hot springs water of Tiberias, okay, he is chayav, he is liable. Ma'ishna b'Shabbat dilo. What is the reason that in regarding what's so different about Shabbat that we say that he's not liable, right? The Gemara answers us. The toladot eish ba'inen veleka. Because the Isur regarding Shabbat is those items derived in regards to fire. That's what we need. And in this case, it's not fire. It's not a derivative of fire. Pesach nami lav toledot Shabbat hu amar. Who? But regarding Pesach, here also must it not be derivatives of fire? Amar Rava, mai chayav. What do we mean, says Rava, when we say the person cooking the Korban Pesach in hot springs of Tiberias water is liable? De katani, as was taught, de ka'avar mishum tzli eish. Why? Because he is over on the transgression of not utilizing roasting it by fire. Rav Chia bereded Rav Natan, matne la, and Rav Chia, the son of Rav Natan, taught it this way, as was said by Rav Chisda specifically, Behedya. Amar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda, Hamivashel b'chamei Tveria b'Shabbat, patur. One who cooks using the hot springs water of Tiberias on Shabbat is exempt. Hey, Pesach, and as for the Korban Pesach, shebishlo b'chamei Tiberia chayav, and one cooking it in the hot springs water again of Tiberias is liable, she'avar mishum tzli eish, because he transgresses the Torah requirement of having it roasted by fire. Amar Rava. Says Rava. Let's get to a new example of another issue.
Rabbi, are the waters in Tiberia hot enough to cook anything?
Yes. All right. If you've ever been there, okay, I remember distinctly going there on a trip, okay, a tiul. And of course, most of it now are spas.
Right.
Depending on where the guide will take you, he can actually take you where you still see the water bubbling up on the surface of the ground.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. And you can put, if you're able to, willing to, actually put your finger in there and you can feel how hot it is.
Okay, but now you bring up another way. If it's Yad Soletis Bo, if it's not Yad Soletis Bo, then how could you cook in it if you can put a finger in it?
Right. Well, remember that, okay, we're talking about the fact that it's come all the way up and it's now come out of the ground flowing on the ground, okay? But if you think about, if I remember correctly, there's some Gemara, I think it's got to be in Gemara Shabbos, okay, where it talks about putting that water through a pipe.
Right.
And then using,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And using that water directly. In other words, a pipe underground into the ground so that water comes up while it's still hot, and then the pipe leads it to something. That is where there's a discussion. So it must be that hot while it's still, okay? Corin has a long explanation, by the way, of what's geothermal heat and things like that.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's what
Thank
it's
you.
based on. Volcanic rock, apparently, that's below the Earth's surface. Okay? Get the feeling that's the kind of topic that somebody could write a doctoral dissertation on. Okay? So, coming back now, Amar Rava, says Rava as follows. What happens if, still we're talking about the Korban Pesach, right? Achlo na. All right, or he ate it while it was only partially roasted. Okay. We said, remember that according to Doraita, that's one is liable, right? What did he say? If one ate it when it was partially roasted, lokesh shtayim, he gets 2 sets of malchus. Okay. Why 2 sets? Right. One for being over on the Torah prohibition, right? And one for actually eating it. And that's what, if you look at Art Scroll on 41b1, note 1, okay, you'll see that it defines it. 2 independent prohibitions, okay, each with its own penalty. One, you should not eat it, and the other, right, regarding roasted by fire. That's at least Rashi's view. Mevushal, if he eats it cooked, lokesh dayim. Again, 2 separate sets of malchus. Na umevashel, if he were to eat it both partially roasted and cooked, lokesh shalosh, says Rava, would get 3 sets of malchus. Okay. Now, Abaye says as follows. Amar ein lokin alav shebeklalut. Okay. Abaye says, this is a general prohibition. And don't we have a concept? Okay. And note number 7 on 41b1, okay, points that out, that when it's a general prohibition, we do not get malchus for a general prohibition. Ika da amre, and there are those who explain it this way. Tartehu de lo lake. 2 sets of malchus he doesn't receive. Chada mihat kalake, but 1 set he would receive. Ika da amre, and there are others who explain it this way. Chadanami lo lake. Even one set he doesn't receive. Okay, of Malchus. Why? Delo miyached la'avyai, because it doesn't specify this the lav. Okay, kilav de chasima. As in the example of the lav, the prohibition in regards to muzzling an animal. That example of the prohibition against muzzling, okay, look at note 8 there in Art Scroll if you want more details, is the classic example, okay, of what a lav is, where you need to have, where you will get malchus as a result of the being over on the prohibition. Okay, all right. So in other words, it's got to, what I'm going to say, detail specifically what the prohibition is in order to say that one is incumbent upon receiving malchus for the transgression. Okay. Now, Rav is going to come back and challenge, of course, Abaye's answer. Rav Amar, what about the following example? He says, and trying to make a comparison with this new example to what we just were discussing. Achal zug, if a Nazarite, let's say, ate the grape skin, lokesh daim, he's going to get 2 sets of malchus. Okay. Chartzan, if he ate grape seed, lokesh daim, he gets 2 sets of malchus. Zag v'chartzan, lokesh shalosh. If he ate both the grape skin and the grape seed, he gets 3 sets of malchus. Okay, isn't that similar to the example that we just said about eating something that's partial, or eating something that's the korban that's partially roasted or that's cooked? Isn't there a parallel there? Doesn't that prove, says Rava, my point? Vayamar ein lokin alav shebeklalut. Again, Abai maintains his argument that you do not give malchus on a generalized prohibition. Ikeda amre, and there are those again who said, tarte hu de lo lake, kada mihat lake. 2 sets of malchus he doesn't get, 1 set he does get. Ikeda amre, and there are those who say, chada nami lo lake, de lo miyached lavye, right? Kilav de chasima. That again, he does not even get 1 set of malchus because the prohibition does not specify the act, as in the classical example again of muzzling. Okay, we now move on, right, to a new Braita. Again, by the way, still dealing with this theme of what happens when one eats the Korban Pesach. Before we were dealing with it when it was eaten in the wrong manner. Now we're going to see the next example or 2 when it's eaten in the wrong time. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. Achal kazayit na mi ba'od yom pator. Okay? Namely, if one ate a olive's measurement of partially cooked Korban Pesach while it was still day, okay? In other words, right, the afternoon of the
14th.
of the 14th,
14th.
right? One is exempt. Kezayit na mishacha shecha. But if he ate an olive's amount of partially roasted after nightfall, once it got dark, chayav, then he would have transgressed.
Right, because that's the time.
Right. Now, Gemara continues, however, and tries to tell us, Achal kazayit sli mi ba'od yom, if he ate a olive's amount of roasted korban pesach while it was still day, lo pasal atzmo mi b'nei chavura. He has not nullified himself from being included in the group that to which he is registered, remember, to be able to eat the korban pesach.
Right, this is Mimenuyot, right?
Kizayet sli shecha shecha, if he ate, and I'm assuming it's on his own, right, a olive's measurement of roasted korban pesach, once it became dark, pasal atzmo mi b'nei hachavura, has nullified himself, invalidated himself by being included in the group, with his companions.
Because he was Yotze already, huh?
What?
Because he was Yotze already, right?
That could be. That could be. That could be one explanation, because he's Yotze already. Good, Mark. Could be another one. We could come up with other examples. Okay? Besides being Yotze already, by eating on his own, it's as if he's nullified his participation in the group.
Right.
Okay, so either way, there could be a number of examples.
Right.
Okay, Tanya Ida, we've got another Braita. Yachol achal kazayit nami ba'od yom. One might think it's possible that he could eat an olive amount of partially roasted korban pesach while day, yehe chayav, that he would be obligated, he would be liable. V'dinhu, and this seems logical and reasonable based on a kal v'chomer. Uma b'sha'a sheyeshno bekum echol tzli, whereas given the time frame that we establish that he's obligated to eat it as roasted, yeshno bebal tochalna, that's at the same time, it should be considered the prohibition of eating it partially roasted. B'sha'ah she'eino bekum echol tzli, and at the time when it is not established where he must eat it as roasted, eino din, is it not logical then, sheyeshno bebal tochalna, that should it therefore be applicable that he has the prohibition of eating partially roasted? Oh, no. Or perhaps that's not the case. B'sha'ah she'eino bekum echol tzli, at the time where it is not established for eating roasted, yeshno bebal tochalna, that there is still the requirement of prohibiting him to eat partially roasted. B'sha'ah sheyeshno bekum echol tzli, and at the time where it is established that he is required to eat it as roasted, eino bebal tochalna, okay, that he is not transgressing the prohibition of eating partially roasted. Va'al titma, and don't be surprised at this. Shaharei hutar miklalo eitzel tzli. Why? Because it would appear that it is permitted based on the general principle of when one must eat it as roasted. Talmud Lomar. Therefore, the text comes to teach us as follows: Al tochlu mimenu na, ubashel mevushal b'mayim. Do not eat it as partially roasted or as cooked in water. Ki im tzli esh. Rather, only with the method, I'm going to say, of roasted by fire. She'ein Talmud Loma, because the text does not teach us ki im b'tzli esh, if it were to be roasted by fire. Uma Talmud Lomar ki im tzli esh lomar lach, and what then would it be if it said, if it were to be roasted? What would that tell you? B'sha'a sheyeshno bekum echol tzli. That would then say, at the time that we establish the eating roasted, yeshno bebal tochal na. Then, okay, there is the prohibition of eating it partially roasted. B'sha'a she'eno bekum echol tzli. At the time when it's not established for eating it roasted, eino bebal tochal na. Then one is not over on the prohibition of eating it partially roasted. Now, Rabbi Omer says, Rabbi Akra Ani. He says, on the verse, I say bashel, when it says cooking, ma Talmud lomar mivushal. Why then is there the additional language using the same word of having been cooked? Sheyachol, it might be, I might think, ein li ela shebishlu mishecha shecha. Rather, I wouldn't think except for the fact that it was cooked once it became dark. Bishlomi ba'od yom, how do I know that when it was cooked, let's say earlier in the day, minayin, how do I even know that therefore in that case, it's prohibited, right? Maybe he cooked it in the afternoon and then roasted it as of night. Talmud Lomar, our text teaches, Bashel mevushal mikol makom, cooked in any circumstances, under any way. Vahai, right? Go ahead.
Rabbi, doesn't using the word sli, doesn't that imply aish? Why do we need sli and aish? I thought they're synonymous or linked.
Okay, good question. Bob, didn't we see before that we just saw a reference to a difference between two views based on sli kedar, pot roast?
Right, okay.
Yet they use the word sli there, okay?
Okay, yes, sorry.
Right? So when we think of roasted, right? Okay. You know,
Got it, okay. There's other kinds.
we might ordinarily think of something done on a spit, for example, right?
Right.
Okay. But that's the question. By the way, I once, just a quick aside, and then we'll continue. I once, many years ago, had the opportunity, before it was the case, to actually visit and see the Samaritans do their Korban Pesach. Okay. And they actually, what they did, and it gives an appreciation for this Gemara, okay, in a sense. They dig a hole in the ground,
Right.
they put bushes in it, they put the bushes on fire. They then take immediately a live lamb, slaughter it right there on the spot, remove, all the wool, etc. Take a long pole, stick it through the sheep from its mouth, I guess, maybe through its anus, I don't know, okay, and roast it right over the open pit, okay? So that's why, I don't know if that was how it was done in the time of Chazal, okay, but it gives us a sense of, I'm sharing that based on Bob's good question, of tzli eish, actually roasted over fire. Okay. Okay. Now, coming back to our Gemara. Coming back also to what we saw that Rebbe said. V'hai b'shem mevushal. And when it says there, the double language of cooking, afke Rebbe litzli kedar. Here's your point. Here's our point.
Right.
Right?
Excludes
That Rebbe may have said, understood it, he may have derived it, right? Regarding the concern about cooking it as in its own juices, we said, as a pot roast, ulashar mashkin, or in other liquids. Imkain, if that's the case, le makra, o bashel, o mevushal. Let then the verse use the same language, right? Cook, or cooked. Mai bashel mevushal, shamat mina tarte. But rather, because of the double language, okay, we can learn two items from it. Okay? In other words, we can learn two halachas from it. That's what they're saying, that Rebbe then learns two halachas, okay, from it. And, okay, from the extra word, according to Rashi. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. We now get to another example. Okay, still dealing with the theme of Korban Pesach. Tanu Rabbanan, says a Braita. Achal tzli miba'od yom chayav. We came across this, that the Braita says if one ate the roasted Korban Pesach during the day, one is liable. Ukazayet na mishachashecha chayav. And even if he ate only an olive amount of partially broiled, partially roasted, once it was dark, he is liable. Okay. So this is a new Braita. Katani, here it seems to teach in this Braita, Tzli Dumia Dana. It says that being fully roasted seems similar to being partially roasted. Mana bilav, aftzli bilav. Here it seems to say that the same way partially roasted is a prohibition, so therefore tzli also, okay, seems to be during the day a prohibition, right? A negative commandment. Okay? Both cases, one would get malchus. Bishlema nakativ. That's acceptable when we see. It's understandable where it's written. Al tochlu mimenu na. Where the Torah specifically says one cannot eat partially roasted. Right? Elet tzli minalan. But where it says in regards to, right, eating the meat roasted by fire. Okay. Where does it say anything like that? Dichtiv, because it's written. V'achlu et habasar balayla hazeh. Because it says to eat the meat on that night. Okay, right? Balayla and bayom no. On night, yes. At daytime, no.
Right.
High love, habami klal asehu. But the Gemara raises the question and says this is a love, a prohibition that seems to be derived from a aseh, a positive commandment. Okay? V'chol love habami klal aseh. And any love that comes from a positive commandment, we consider to be a positive commandment. And so just a little bit, Amar Rav Chisda Ha'mani, Says Rav Chisda, who then is the Tana of this Braita? Rebbe Yehuda he. It's Rebbe Yehuda. And what does Rebbe Yehuda say? Okay, that continues for tomorrow. The Tanya, Shur v'seh, Sharua v'kalut nedavat aseh muto. Okay, and he goes into a discussion of that and further into what Rabbi Yehuda says as a way of trying to show, okay, that you can derive a love from an assay, okay, and whether or not the Gemara is going to accept that, okay, we'll see when we learn tomorrow. Okay, so everybody have a good Shabbos. Okay, stay well and take care. All right?
Good Shabbos to you.
Good
Shabbos, everyone. Thank you
everybody.
very much, Rabbi. Be well.
Good